What if I told you that the entire War of the Five Kings, every brutal death, every burned city, every destroyed family in Game of Thrones, all happened because two people could not stop having sex with each other, and those two people were brother and sister. The Lannisters, hear me roar, the richest family in Westeros, the most powerful house, controllers of the Iron Throne. By the end, completely extinct, wiped off the map, their legacy, ashes, and horror. But here is what nobody talks about. This was not a political failure. This was not bad luck. This was two people, Cersei and Jaime Lannister, who were so obsessed with each other that they destroyed everything. Their father's legacy, their own children, an entire kingdom, hundreds of thousands of lives. The golden twins of Casterly Rock, born holding each other, died buried together under rubble, and between birth and death, they set Westeros on fire. Let me tell you how deep this goes. Every major catastrophe in Game of Thrones connects directly to their relationship. The War of Five Kings started because of their secret. Ned Stark's execution happened to protect their secret. Joffrey's madness, he was their son, a product of incest. The Sept of Baelor explosion that killed hundreds, Cersei did it to hide their crimes. King's Landing burning to the ground, the final consequence of everything they set in motion. 3 children were born from this forbidden love, Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, presented to the world as the royal heirs of King Robert Baratheon. But Robert was not their father. Jaime Lannister was. These were bastards of incest sitting on the Iron Throne, the entire kingdom bowing to children who had no right to rule. And here is the truly disturbing part. Cersei and Jaime knew this was wrong. They knew the consequences. They knew that if anyone discovered the truth, it meant death for them and their children. But they could not stop, would not stop. They were addicted to each other in a way that made them capable of anything. Murder, done. They murdered the hand of the king when he got too close to the truth. Child murder, Jaime pushed a 7-year-old boy out of a window because that boy saw them together, starting wars. They let tens of thousands die in battle rather than confess their secret. Genocide, Cersei burned hundreds of people alive in the Sept of Baelor, and when that was not enough, she let an entire city be destroyed. But it started so innocently. 2 beautiful children who looked identical, who played together, who could not be told apart. And somewhere in that blurred identity, something twisted grew. They stopped seeing each other as separate people. Cersei once said, "We are not 2 people, we are 2 halves of the same whole." That belief, that narcissistic fusion, that was the seed of everything that came after. Now, you might be wondering, how did nobody notice? How did this go on for decades? How did they fool an entire kingdom? That is exactly what we are about to explore. The lies, the murders, the carefully constructed deception, and the moment when it all started to crumble, the moment a little boy climbed a tower in Winterfell and saw something he was never supposed to see. This is not a love story. This is the story of how obsession destroys everything it touches, how privilege makes people believe they are above morality, how secrets demand more secrets until the weight crushes everything. This is how House Lannister, the proud lions, the richest and most powerful family in Westeros, went completely extinct. And it all started in a womb where 2 twins held each other and never learned to let go. To understand how this all began, we need to go back to the year 266, after conquest, Casterly Rock, the ancestral seat of House Lannister. Lady Joanna Lannister was giving birth. But this was not an ordinary birth. She was delivering twins. Cersei came first, then Jaime holding on to his sister's foot as if he could not bear to be separated from her even for a moment. 2 golden-haired, green-eyed, absolutely perfect Lannister children. Their father, Tywin Lannister, looked at them with immense pride. These were his heirs, beautiful, strong, the future of House Lannister. But 1 year later, tragedy struck. Joanna became pregnant again. During the birth of their third child, Tyrion, she died. Tywin lost his wife. The twins lost their mother, and they blamed the baby. They blamed Tyrion for taking away the one person who truly watched over them, who could have noticed what was developing between them. After Joanna's death, everything changed. Tywin, consumed by grief and ambition, threw himself into his work as hand to the Mad King Aerys. He spent years in King's Landing, away from Casterly Rock, away from his children. The twins grew up without proper supervision, without anyone who cared enough to see what was happening. Cersei and Jaime looked absolutely identical as young children. They played games where they would switch clothes and pretend to be each other. Cersei would dress as a boy. Jaime would wear her dresses. No one could tell them apart, except their mother. And now their mother was gone. This game of switching identities, this blurring of where one ended and the other began, this became the foundation of something deeply wrong. They did not see themselves as brother and sister. They saw themselves as the same person in two bodies. Cersei would later say, "We shared a womb. We came into this world together. We belong together." Jaime believed she was not his sister, but rather his female self. This was not love. This was narcissism taken to its most extreme and dangerous form. The physical relationship started in their youth. What began as childhood curiosity evolved into something much darker. By their teenage years, they had a fully sexual relationship, and neither of them thought it was wrong. They looked at the Targaryens who had married brother to sister for 300 years. They believed their beauty, their status, their Lannister name placed them above the normal rules that governed everyone else. Tywin had no idea, or perhaps he willfully refused to see it. He was too focused on rebuilding the Lannister legacy after his father's weakness nearly destroyed it. He believed his children were perfect. The thought that they could be engaged in something so depraved never crossed his mind. Or if it did, he buried it deep because acknowledging it would destroy everything he was building. Then came the year 282, a crucial turning point. Cersei was betrothed to Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. This would have been the ultimate alliance. A Lannister as future queen, but Mad King Aerys rejected the proposal. He insulted Tywin, saying that Tywin was his servant, not his equal. This rejection humiliated Tywin and changed the course of history. That same year, something else happened. Jaime Lannister, at just 15 years old, was named to the Kingsguard. This was supposed to be a great honor, but for Tywin, it was a disaster. His heir, his firstborn son, had just sworn a lifelong vow of celibacy. Jaime would never marry, would never have legitimate children, would never inherit Casterly Rock. Tywin was furious. But here is what Tywin did not know. This was Cersei's plan all along. She had convinced Jaime to accept the position. Why? Because if Jaime joined the Kingsguard, he could never marry another woman. He would remain celibate in the eyes of the world, which meant he would always be available to her. She manipulated him into destroying his father's dynastic plans just to keep him for herself. Think about the selfishness of that decision. Cersei sacrificed her family's future, her father's dreams, the continuation of their house, all to ensure that Jaime could never belong to anyone but her. And Jaime went along with it because he was already completely under her control. Then came Robert's rebellion, the year 283. The Mad King Aerys was losing the war. King's Landing was being sacked, and Jaime Lannister, the youngest member of the Kingsguard, made a choice that would define him forever. He killed the king he had sworn to protect. He stabbed Aerys in the back and became known as the Kingslayer. Honor meant nothing anymore. He had already broken his vows of celibacy countless times with Cersei. What was one more broken vow? What was killing a mad king compared to the crimes he was already committing in secret? Robert Baratheon won the throne, and Tywin, ever the opportunist, offered a deal. Cersei would marry Robert. She would become Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. The wedding happened in the year 284. Cersei was now married to the king, and Jaime remained in the Kingsguard, permanently stationed in King's Landing, right where Cersei was. It was the perfect setup. Husband and wife living in the Red Keep, brother and sister able to continue their affair in secret. Except now, the stakes were infinitely higher. Now, if they were caught, it was not just incest, it was treason. It was betraying the king. The punishment would be death. But they did not stop. They could not stop. The risk made it more thrilling. The danger made it more intense. And Cersei, now Queen of Westeros, began to plan something that would change everything. She decided that she would never bear Robert's children. Every child she carried would be Jaime's. She would put her own bastards on the Iron Throne, and no one would ever know. This was the foundation. This was where it all began. Two children who never learned boundaries, who grew up believing they were one person split in two, who became so obsessed with each other that they were willing to betray everyone, deceive an entire kingdom, and risk everything just to be together. And the truly terrifying part, they thought they could get away with it forever. They thought they were smarter than everyone else. They thought their love made them special, made them untouchable. They had no idea that their obsession would lead to the deaths of hundreds of thousands, that it would destroy their own children, that it would end with both of them crushed under rubble as their world burned around them. But before we get to the ending, we need to understand the middle. We need to see exactly how Cersei managed to fool King Robert Baratheon, how she passed off 3 golden-haired children as his legitimate heirs, and how that lie, that one massive deception, set in motion the War of 5 Kings and everything that followed. The year 284, the royal wedding. Cersei Lannister was about to marry Robert Baratheon, the new king of the 7 Kingdoms. For most women this would be the greatest honor imaginable, becoming queen, ruling beside the most powerful man in Westeros. But for Cersei this wedding was a prison sentence. The wedding night destroyed any chance this marriage ever had. Robert Baratheon was drunk, heavily drunk. He stumbled into the bedchamber, could barely stand, and when he finally bedded Cersei, when he was inside her, he whispered a name, Lyanna Stark, the woman he truly loved, the woman who had died years before. Robert called Cersei by another woman's name during their first night together. Cersei never forgave him for that. Never. From that moment, she hated Robert Baratheon with every fiber of her being. She saw him as unworthy of her, beneath her, a drunken fool who could not even remember whose bed he was in. So what did Cersei do? The very next day she resumed her affair with Jaime. They had sex in the White Sword Tower, where the Kingsguard lived. They had sex in hidden passages throughout the Red Keep. They had sex anywhere they could find a private moment. The risk was enormous. If anyone caught them, both would be executed. But Cersei did not care. If she had to be married to Robert, she would at least have Jaime. And Robert made it easy for her. He drank constantly. He visited brothels. He let himself become fat and lazy. He paid no attention to his wife. He spent his days hunting and his nights drinking. Cersei watched the man who was once a legendary warrior turn into a disgrace. Her contempt grew every single day. Then Cersei became pregnant. This happened within the first few months of marriage. And this pregnancy was Robert's, the only time she ever carried his legitimate child. But when Cersei realized she was pregnant with Robert's baby, she made a choice that revealed exactly how twisted she had become. She could not bear the thought of carrying his child, so she got moon tea from the maesters and aborted the pregnancy. She killed Robert's legitimate heir before it could be born. She told Robert she had miscarried naturally. He believed her. He was too drunk to question it. And that established the pattern. From that moment on, Cersei decided that she would never give birth to Robert's child. Only Jaime's children would be born. Only Lannister blood would continue the line. Shortly after the abortion, Cersei became pregnant again, but this time she had made sure the father was Jaime. She carried the pregnancy to term, and in the year 286, 2 years after her wedding, she gave birth to a son, golden hair, green eyes, perfect Lannister features. They named him Joffrey, and everyone believed he was Robert's true-born son and heir to the Iron Throne. But he was not. Joffrey was Jaime Lannister's son, a bastard of incest presented to the world as a prince. The entire kingdom celebrated. Tywin was thrilled. Robert was too drunk to care, and Cersei and Jaime shared a secret that could destroy them all. This became Cersei's system. Whenever she slept with Robert, which was not often, she would take moon tea immediately afterward. She would make sure she never conceived his child. But with Jaime she was careful. She only became pregnant when she knew she could pass it off as Robert's. She was meticulous, calculating, cold. 4 years later, in 290, she gave birth again. A daughter this time. Myrcella, golden hair, green eyes. Another Lannister bastard presented as a Baratheon princess. And 1 year after that, in 291, she had a third child, Tommen, a gentle, sweet boy, also golden-haired, also green-eyed, also Jen's son. 3 children over 5 years. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, all of them products of incest, all of them carrying Lannister blood on both sides, none of them showing even a trace of Baratheon features, and somehow no one questioned it. The golden hair was attributed to Cersei's Lannister genes. Everyone assumed that was normal. But there was a problem, a genetic problem that would eventually expose everything. Every single one of Robert's bastards, and he had many, had black hair. Gendry, the blacksmith's apprentice in King's Landing, Maya Stone, in the Vale, Bara, born to a prostitute, all of them had jet black hair. Because Baratheon genes were dominant. When a Baratheon had children with anyone, the children always had black hair. But Cersei's 3 children all had golden hair. If Robert was truly their father, this was genetically impossible. The evidence was right there for anyone who cared to look. But for 14 years, no one looked, no one questioned, no one investigated. Cersei grew more arrogant with each passing year. She had successfully fooled an entire kingdom. Her bastard children were in line for the throne. Joffrey would be king one day. The Lannister bloodline would rule Westeros through deception. She thought she was untouchable. She thought she was smarter than everyone else. Jaime lived with constant internal conflict. He had violated every vow he ever made. His Kingsguard oath of celibacy, broken thousands of times. His duty to protect the king, betrayed daily. His honor as a knight, destroyed. He was already called Kingslayer for killing Arrys. Now he was also a secret oath-breaker, sleeping with the queen and fathering false heirs. But he justified it to himself. He told himself it was love. He told himself that Cersei was not really his sister, she was him. He told himself they were meant to be together. The things I do for love, that became his motto, his justification for everything. He would do anything for Cersei, including betraying everyone and everything else. Meanwhile, there was a prophecy hanging over Cersei's head. When she was young, she had visited a woman called Maggie the Frog, a woods witch who could see the future, and Maggie had told her terrible things. You will be queen, but only until another comes, another younger and more beautiful, who will cast you down and take all you hold dear. And worse, you will have 3 children. Gold will be their crowns, and gold will be their shrouds. All 3 of your children will die before you." This prophecy haunted Cersei. It drove many of her paranoid decisions. Every younger, beautiful woman became a threat. Every setback felt like the prophecy coming true, and the part about her children dying terrified her. She loved her children, in her own twisted way. The thought of outliving them was unbearable. But here is the irony. Every action Cersei took to prevent the prophecy actually helped it come true. She became paranoid. She made enemies. She trusted no one. And eventually that paranoia would lead her to make decisions that killed her own children. The prophecy was self-fulfilling. But we will get to that. For now, for 14 years from 284 to 298, the lie held. Robert drank himself into oblivion. Cersei and Jaime continued their affair. 3 bastard children grew up believing they were legitimate heirs. Joffrey began showing signs of cruelty and madness. Myrcella remained sweet and innocent. Tommen was gentle and kind. None of them knew the truth about who they really were. And then, in the year 298, everything started to fall apart. Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King, began to investigate. He was an old man, honorable, intelligent, and he noticed something that no one else had. He noticed that all of Robert's bastards had black hair, every single one. He began to wonder why the 3 royal children did not. Jon Arryn visited Robert's bastards personally. He studied a book called The Lineages and Histories of the Great Houses of the 7 Kingdoms. He found a pattern. Every time in history a Baratheon married a Lannister, the children had black hair. Every single time. The seed is strong, he kept saying. The Baratheon genes were always dominant. He shared his findings with Stannis Baratheon, Robert's younger brother. Stannis understood immediately. The children were not Robert's, they were bastards, frauds. The succession was built on a lie. Jon Arryn planned to tell Robert everything. He was preparing to expose Cersei and Jaime. He was about to reveal the greatest secret in the 7 kingdoms. But Cersei found out. Her spies in the Red Keep brought her the news. Jon Arryn was investigating her children. He was getting too close to the truth. Something had to be done. Someone had to die. And so, in the late months of 298, Jon Arryn was poisoned, tears of lice. A poison that left no trace and mimicked natural illness. The old Hand of the King died in his bed, and everyone believed it was simply his time. Cersei had just committed murder to protect her secret. The first murder. But far from the last, Jon Arryn died. Without telling Robert the truth, but he had told Stannis enough, and Robert needed a new Hand of the King. Someone he could trust completely. So he decided to travel north to Winterfell and ask his oldest friend, Ned Stark. This decision would change everything, because when Robert Baratheon traveled to Winterfell, he brought his entire family. Cersei came, the children came, and Jaime came. They all went north together, and in Winterfell at the home of the Starks, Cersei and Jaime would make a mistake that would start a war that would kill tens of thousands of people. But before we get to that, you need to understand something. This was not just about hiding a secret anymore. This was about 3 children whose very existence was a crime. This was about a false heir to the throne. This was about the fact that if the truth came out, Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen would be executed as abominations. Cersei and Jaime would die. The entire Lannister family would be disgraced. So when the secret was threatened, they were willing to do anything, and I mean anything, including pushing a 7-year-old boy out of a window. Early 298, King Robert Baratheon's massive royal procession arrived at Winterfell. Dozens of carriages, hundreds of soldiers, the entire Lannister family traveling north into Stark territory. Robert wanted to offer his old friend Ned Stark the position of Hand of the King, a great honor, but also a decision that would doom both their houses. Cersei hated the north. too cold, too primitive, too far from civilization as she knew it. She complained constantly during the journey. But she came because Robert commanded it, and more importantly, because Jaime was coming too. Even in Winterfell, even in the home of their enemies, she could not stay away from him. This should have been the moment they exercised caution. They were guests in someone else's castle, surrounded by Northerners who valued honor above all else. The smart thing would have been to abstain, to wait until they returned to King's Landing, to keep their hands off each other for a few weeks. But addicts do not think clearly, and Cersei and Jaime were addicted to each other in a way that overrode all logic. They found an abandoned tower on the edge of Winterfell, old, unused, far from where anyone would venture, perfect for a secret encounter. So one morning, while the castle was busy with the royal visit, they went to that tower and gave in to their compulsion. They did not check carefully enough. They did not post a guard. They assumed they were safe. Brandon Stark was 7 years old. Everyone called him Bran. He was the second youngest of the Stark children, and he loved climbing walls, towers, trees. It did not matter. His mother Catelyn begged him to stop. Climbing was dangerous. He could fall. He could die. But Bran never listened. He was too good at climbing, too confident in his abilities. The danger made it exciting. That morning, Bran decided to climb the tallest abandoned tower in Winterfell, the same tower where Cersei and Jaime were together. He scaled the outside wall, moving from handhold to handhold with the ease of a child who had done this 1,000 times. He reached the window, and he heard voices inside. Curiosity got the better of him. He peeked through the window. What he saw would change the course of history. Cersei and Jaime having sex. The Queen and her brother, the Kingsguard Knight, who was supposed to be celibate. Brian's young mind could not fully process what he was seeing, but he knew it was wrong, deeply wrong. He must have made a sound, a gasp, a movement, something that caught their attention. Jaime saw him first. Their eyes met through the window. A 7-year-old boy, looking at a man engaged in an act that would get them both killed if exposed. Time seemed to stop. Jaime had a choice to make in that split second. Let the boy go and hope he says nothing, or make sure he never tells anyone what he saw. Jaime chose violence. He grabbed Bran through the window. The boy struggled, but Jaime was much stronger. Cersei watched, her face cold. She did not stop him, did not protest, did not say spare the child. Jaime looked into Bran's terrified eyes and spoke 4 words that would define him. The things I do for love. Then he pushed. Bran fell 3 stories and hit the ground hard. The impact should have killed him instantly. Somehow, it did not. Bran's body was found minutes later by servants. He was unconscious, breathing, but barely. His legs were shattered. His skull might have been fractured. The castle erupted in panic. Lady Catelyn rushed to her son's side and would not leave. The maesters examined him and shook their heads gravely. The boy was in a coma. He might never wake, and if he did, he would never walk again. Everyone assumed it was a climbing accident. Bran climbed too high, lost his grip, and fell. Tragic, but not suspicious. To Cersei and Jaime expressed the appropriate concern. They offered maesters from their own household. They said all the right things, and they prepared to leave Winterfell with their secret intact. But Cersei made a critical mistake. She let her paranoia override her intelligence. What if Bran woke up? What if he remembered? What if a 7-year-old boy told everyone what he saw? The risk was too great. She decided he had to die, so she hired a cutthroat, a random assassin, and she gave him a Valyrian steel dagger to do the job. This was stupid on multiple levels. Valyrian steel daggers were rare and expensive. This particular one belonged to Robert. It was distinctive, traceable. Using it was like leaving a signed confession. But Cersei was not thinking clearly. She just wanted the boy dead. The assassin struck while most of the castle slept. He entered Bran's room, where Catelyn kept vigil by his bedside. He pulled out the dagger. Catelyn saw him and screamed. She grabbed the blade with her bare hands, cutting herself deeply, fighting desperately to protect her unconscious son. The struggle woke Bran's direwolf, Summer. The wolf leaped at the assassin and tore out his throat. The man died. Bran lived, and Catelyn was left holding a priceless Valyrian steel dagger. She knew this was not random. Someone had sent an assassin to murder her comatose son, but who and why? She kept the dagger as evidence. When she eventually traveled south to King's Landing, she showed it to Petyr Baelish, Littlefinger, a man she had known since childhood. He lied to her. He told her the dagger belonged to Tyrion Lannister. In truth, it was Robert's dagger, lost in a bet, but Littlefinger saw an opportunity to create chaos, and he took it. Catelyn believed him. She thought Tyrion Lannister had tried to murder her son. So when she encountered Tyrion by chance at an inn on the road, she did something rash. She arrested him, publicly. In front of witnesses, she took him prisoner and dragged him to the Vale to face her sister Lysa. This was an act of war. Catelyn Stark had kidnapped the son of Tywin Lannister, and Tywin did not know about the incest. He did not know about Brander. He only knew that the Starks had attacked his family without provocation. He was furious. He called his banners immediately. He sent his most brutal knight, Gregor Clegane, to raid the Riverlands. He began preparing for war. Meanwhile, in King's Landing, things were spiraling out of control. Jaime was enraged that his brother had been taken. He confronted Ned Stark in the streets of the capital. They fought. Jaime's men killed Ned's guards. Jaime wounded Ned's leg with his sword. Then he fled the city before Robert could return and punish him. He rode west to join his father's army. And Robert was dying. He went on a hunting trip, drank too much wine that Cersei made sure was extra strong. He was gored by a boar, and the wound was fatal. Cersei had effectively assassinated her own husband. As Robert lay dying, Ned Stark finally completed the investigation that Jon Arryn had started. He figured out the truth. Joffrey was not Robert's son. None of the children were. Ned made a choice that sealed his fate. He confronted Cersei privately. He told her he knew about her children. He knew they were bastards. He knew about the incest. And in an act of mercy that Cersei would never understand, he gave her a chance to run. Take your children and flee before Robert dies. Go into exile. Spare your family the consequences. But Cersei did not run. She saw Ned's mercy as weakness. She saw an opportunity instead. Robert died before Ned could tell him the truth, and the moment Robert was dead, Cersei moved. She had Joffrey crowned immediately. She had Ned arrested as a traitor. She took control of the capital. Ned was given a choice: confess to treason publicly and be allowed to take the Black, join the Night's Watch, and live out his days at the Wall. It would spare his daughters who were still in King's Landing. So Ned agreed. He stood on the steps of the great Sept of Baelor, in front of thousands of people. He confessed to crimes he did not commit. He called Joffrey the true king. The plan was to send him north after this humiliation, but Joffrey was unstable, cruel. He had his own ideas about power. Despite his mother's advice, despite everyone's counsel, he gave a different order. He commanded his Kingsguard to bring him Ned Stark's head, right there, right then. In front of the massive crowd, Serlin Payne drew ice, Ned's own ancestral sword, and he beheaded Eddard Stark on the steps of the Sept. The crowd gasped. Cersei's face went pale. She had not wanted this. It was too much, too soon. But Joffrey was grinning. He thought he looked strong. This execution changed everything. The North exploded in rage. Robb Stark, Ned's eldest son, called all the northern banners. He marched south with an army. He declared war on the Lannisters. The Riverlands joined him because Castlan was a Tully. Stannis Baratheon, who knew the truth about Joffrey's parentage, declared himself the rightful king. Renly Baratheon, Robert's youngest brother, also claimed the throne with the support of the powerful Tyrells. Balon Greyjoy saw weakness and declared the Iron Islands independent. 5 kings, all claiming the throne, all raising armies. The War of the 5 Kings had begun. Tens of thousands would die in the coming battles. Entire regions would be devastated. Families would be destroyed, all because Cersei and Jaime could not stop having sex for a few weeks. All because Jaime pushed a boy out of a window. All to protect a secret that would eventually come out anyway. And the cruelest irony, Bran Stark survived. He woke from his coma. He could never walk again, but he lived. He remembered nothing about his fall, nothing about what he saw in that tower. The boy they tried to kill twice became a witness who could not testify. They had destroyed everything for nothing. But the destruction was only beginning. The war had started, and Cersei's false king, her son of incest, was now sitting on the Iron Throne, unstable, sadistic, and completely beyond anyone's control. 5 men claimed the Iron Throne simultaneously. Joffrey Baratheon in King's Landing, a bastard of incest pretending to be the rightful heir. Stannis Baratheon on Dragonstone, the actual rightful heir who knew the truth about Joffrey's parentage. Renly Baratheon in Highgarden, charismatic and backed by the wealthiest house in Westeros. Robb Stark in the north, not claiming the Iron Throne but declaring northern independence and calling himself king in the north. And Balon Greyjoy in the Iron Islands, seizing the opportunity to break free from mainland rule. The realm was tearing itself apart, and at the center of it all was a lie, a secret that Cersei and Jaime had created in bed. The first major battle came quickly. Robb Stark proved himself a brilliant military commander, despite his youth. He led his army south and caught Jaime Lannister's forces by surprise at the Whispering Wood. The battle was a slaughter. Robb's forces destroyed the Lannister army, and they captured Jaime himself. The greatest swordsman in Westeros, taken prisoner by a teenage boy. Cersei received the news in King's Landing, and something inside her broke. Her twin, her other half, was a prisoner. She had never been separated from Jaime for this long. She did not know how to function without him. Her decisions became increasingly erratic. She saw enemies everywhere. She trusted no one. Tywin had sent Tyrion to King's Landing to serve as acting hand of the king. His job was to control both Joffrey and Cersei until Tywin could win the war. Tyrion was clever, politically skilled, and actually competent. He made smart decisions. He tried to stabilize the situation, but Cersei fought him at every turn. She could not stand the idea of her dwarf brother having power. She undermined him constantly, accused him of plotting against her. She was spiraling into paranoia. Meanwhile, Stannis Baratheon was preparing to attack King's Landing directly. He had discovered the truth about Cersei's children from Jon Arryn before he died. He knew Joffrey was a bastard. He sent letters to every lord in Westeros declaring it. Most people dismissed it as propaganda. They thought Stannis was lying to justify his claim to the throne. But he was telling the truth, and he was coming with a fleet of ships to take what was rightfully his. The Battle of Blackwater Bay happened in 299. Stannis' fleet sailed up the river toward King's Landing. The city's defenses were weak. Most of the Lannister forces were in the field fighting Robb Stark. If Stannis broke through, it was over. Joffrey would be executed. Cersei would be executed. The truth would be revealed to everyone. Tyrion came up with a desperate plan. Wildfire. The same substance the Mad King had hidden under the city years ago. Highly explosive green liquid. Tyrion had it loaded onto a single ship and sent it into the middle of Stannis' fleet. When it ignited, the entire river turned green with flames. Ships exploded. Men burned alive. The black water became an inferno. But it was not enough. Stannis' forces still made it to shore. They were breaking through the city gates. Joffrey, terrified, abandoned his post and ran back to the castle. The defense was collapsing. Cersei, watching from the Red Keep, prepared to poison herself and Tommen rather than let Stannis capture them. She sat with a vial of poison, seconds away from murdering her youngest son. Then Tywin arrived. He had marched his army back from the west at the last possible moment. He brought the Tyrells with him, a new alliance forged in desperation. Together they crashed into Stannis' forces from behind. The battle turned. Stannis was defeated and forced to retreat. King's Landing was saved, but barely. Tywin took direct control after that. He moved into the Tower of the Hand. He pushed Tyrion aside. Despite the fact that Tyrion had saved the city, he took all the credit, and he arranged a new marriage alliance. Joffrey would wed Margaery Tyrell, the richest house, and the house controlling the throne united. In the north, things were going badly for Robb Stark. He had won every battle, but was losing the war. His forces were stretched thin, and then he made a catastrophic mistake. He married for love. He married a foreign healer named Talisa, breaking his oath to marry one of Walder Frey's daughters. The Freys were insulted, furious. They would not forget this slight. Jaime, meanwhile, was still a prisoner. Catelyn Stark, desperate to get her daughters back from King's Landing, made a choice that would fracture the Northern Alliance. She freed Jaime without permission. She sent him south with Brienne of Tarth, making him swear to send Sansa and Arya home. Robb's bannermen saw this as treason. They lost faith in the Starks. Jaime's journey south with Brienne changed him. They were captured by Bolton men. A cruel soldier named Locke cut off Jaime's sword hand just to humiliate him. Jaime, whose entire identity was built on being the greatest fighter in Westeros, lost the thing that defined him. He was broken, humiliated, forced to confront who he was without his sword. Brienne showed him something he had never seen before: true honor. She kept her word even when it cost her. She protected him, even though he was her enemy. She believed in something greater than herself. Jaime started to question everything, started to wonder if he had wasted his life on the wrong person. But the worst was yet to come. Robb Stark needed to make peace with the Freys, so he agreed to attend the wedding of Edmure Tully to one of Walder Frey's daughters, a gesture of reconciliation. The Starks and their bannermen traveled to the twins, Walder Frey's castle. They attended the wedding feast. They ate and drank under the Frey's roof. Guest right, one of the most sacred laws in Westeros, protected them, or so they thought. Walder Frey had been bought by Tywin Lannister, so had Roose Bolton, one of Robb's own bannermen. They had agreed to betray the Starks in exchange for power and land, and they chose a wedding feast to do it, the most sacred, protected space. They waited until the bedding ceremony began. Then Frey's men locked the doors. The musicians were not musicians. They were crossbowmen. They pulled out weapons and began firing into the crowd. Robb's pregnant wife Talisa was stabbed repeatedly in her stomach, killing her and their unborn child. Robb was shot full of arrows. Catelyn grabbed a hostage and begged for her son's life. Walder Frey refused. Robb Bolton personally finished off Robb, saying the Lannisters send their regards. Then they cut Catelyn's throat. The Red Wedding, the most infamous betrayal in Westerosi history. Dozens of northern lords slaughtered. an entire army's leadership wiped out. The Northern Rebellion effectively ended, and all of it orchestrated by Tywin Lannister, who decided that killing a dozen men at dinner was more efficient than killing 10,000 in battle. The North was devastated. The Riverlands were crushed. The war was essentially over. The Lannisters had won through treachery and violation of every sacred custom. Songs would be sung about this betrayal for generations. The Lannister name, already stained by Jaime's kingslaying, was now associated with the worst kind of dishonor. And all of this, every single death at the Red Wedding, every soldier who died in the War of Five Kings, every burned village and raped woman and murdered child, all of it traced back to one cause: Cersei and Jaime's inability to keep their hands off each other. Joffrey's false claim to the throne, the lie that started everything. When Jaime finally returned to King's Landing, missing his hand, changed by his experiences, he expected Cersei to be the same. But she was not. She was harder, more paranoid, more desperate, and she blamed him. Blamed him for being captured, for leaving her alone, for taking too long to return. Their reunion was not what either of them expected. The war had cost the Lannisters dearly. Thousands of their soldiers dead, their gold reserves depleting, their reputation destroyed. They controlled the throne through fear and treachery, not through legitimacy or respect. And sitting on that throne was Joffrey, who was about to reveal just how unstable and dangerous he truly was. Tywin believed he had secured the dynasty. He had ended the war. He had arranged powerful alliances. But he had no idea that his grandchildren were actually his daughter's incest bastards. He had no idea that everything he built was constructed on sand, and he had no idea that Cersei's paranoia and Joffrey's madness would soon destroy everything he had accomplished. The body count was already staggering. Jon Arryn murdered, Robert Baratheon assassinated, Ned Stark executed, Robb Stark and his wife butchered, Catelyn murdered, dozens of lords dead, tens of thousands of common soldiers rotting in fields, and for what? To protect the secret of 3 children who should never have been born. But the war was over. The Lannisters had won. Joffrey was secure on his throne, and he was about to show everyone exactly what kind of monster sits on the Iron Throne when that throne is built on lies. Joffrey Baratheon became king at 13 years old. By all accounts, he should never have been anywhere near power. The warning signs were there from the beginning. As a child, he cut open a pregnant cat to see the kittens inside. He tortured animals for entertainment. He showed no empathy, no remorse, no capacity for kindness. These were not normal childhood behaviors. These were indicators of something deeply wrong. Robert ignored it. He was too busy drinking and hunting to pay attention to his supposed son. Cersei saw it and made excuses. She called it strength. She said he was decisive, powerful, born to rule. She was so blinded by love for her child that she could not see the monster she had created. Or perhaps she did not want to see it. Jaime noticed but said nothing. What could he say? This was his biological son, the product of his relationship with Cersei. Acknowledging Joffrey's madness would mean acknowledging his own responsibility, so he looked away, just like everyone else. The moment Joffrey became king, the cruelty escalated. His first major act was executing Ned Stark against everyone's advice that set the tone for everything that followed. Joffrey did not want counsel. He did not want wisdom. He wanted absolute obedience and the freedom to indulge his worst impulses. Sansa Stark became his primary target. She was his betrothed, a hostage, completely at his mercy, and Joffrey showed her none. He forced her to look at her father's severed head mounted on a spike. He had his Kingsguard beat her in the throne room when she displeased him. He threatened to bring her father's head to their wedding bed. This was not normal cruelty. This was sadism. He enjoyed her suffering. Tyrion intervened when he could. He physically slapped Joffrey multiple times. He saved Sansa from the worst of the abuse. But he could not be everywhere, and Cersei protected Joffrey from any real consequences. In her mind, Tyrion was the problem, not her perfect son. After the Battle of Blackwater, the political situation shifted. Joffrey was betrothed to Margaery Tyrell instead of Sansa. This was part of the alliance with the Tyrells. Margaery was clever. She understood how to manipulate men like Joffrey. She pretended to be fascinated by his crossbow. She acted interested in his stories of cruelty. She made him believe she admired his strength. It was all performance, but Joffrey fell for it. Cersei watched this with growing jealousy and fear. Margaery was younger, beautiful, beloved by the people. Everything the old prophecy had warned about. Cersei saw her as a threat, not an ally. The two queens began a subtle war for influence over Joffrey. Meanwhile, Tywin tried to teach Joffrey how to actually rule. He held small council meetings. He explained strategy and politics, but Joffrey resisted every lesson. He kept saying, "I am the king," as if that title alone made him wise. Tywin delivered a devastating response that everyone remembered. Any man who must say, "I am the king," is no true king. But words did not change Joffrey. He continued to be impulsive, cruel, and dangerously unstable. He shot commoners with his crossbow from the castle walls. He threatened his grandfather. He humiliated his uncle Tyrion at every opportunity. The boy was drunk on power and had no internal mechanism to restrain himself. Then came the royal wedding. Joffrey and Margaery's marriage in early 300. It should have been a celebration. Instead, it became another display of Joffrey's cruelty. He hired dwarf performers to act out a grotesque mockery of the War of Five Kings, Robb Stark's death. The Red Wedding, all played for laughs. Sansa was forced to watch a parody of her family's slaughter. The Tyrion was humiliated throughout the feast. Joffrey made him his cupbearer, poured wine on his head, mocked his height in front of hundreds of guests. It was vindictive and childish, but also dangerous. Tyrion had saved the city during the Battle of Blackwater. He deserved respect. Instead, he received contempt from a king who understood nothing about loyalty or gratitude. Then came the pie, a massive wedding pie brought out with great ceremony. Joffrey cut into it with his Valyrian steel sword. He ate. He drank from his wine cup, and within moments he began choking. His face turned red, then purple. He clawed at his throat desperately. He could not breathe, could not speak. The poison was called the Strangler, placed in his wine cup by conspirators no one suspected. Joffrey died in front of the entire court, in front of his new wife, in front of his mother. He pointed at Tyrion while dying, a final act of accusation. Then he was gone. The mad boy king dead at his own wedding feast. Cersei's reaction was immediate and visceral. She screamed for Tyrion's arrest. She was convinced he had done it. The evidence seemed obvious. Tyrion had been Joffrey's cupbearer. He had motive after years of abuse. He had opportunity. The entire court watched as Tyrion was seized and dragged away. But Tyrion had not poisoned Joffrey. The real conspirators were Olenna Tyrell and Petyr Baelish. Olenna because she recognized that Joffrey was uncontrollable and dangerous. Better to have gentle, pliable Tommen as king. Littlefinger because chaos was opportunity. And this created maximum chaos. They had planned it perfectly. The poison was placed in the cup during the confusion of the feast. Tyrion was the perfect scapegoat. Sansa disappeared during the chaos. Littlefinger had arranged her escape. She was smuggled out of King's Landing, while everyone was distracted by the dying king. By the time anyone noticed she was gone, she was already far away. Joffrey died at 13, the same age he became king. His reign lasted only 2 years, but in that short time he caused immeasurable damage. He executed Ned Stark, igniting a war. He tortured Sansa, creating lasting trauma. He alienated allies with his cruelty. He proved that putting a bastard of incest on the throne was a catastrophic mistake. And here is the truly dark irony. Cersei loved him, genuinely loved him. Despite all his cruelty, despite all the evidence of his madness, she saw him as perfect. She mourned him deeply. His death was the first of Maggie the Frog's prophecies to come true. One child dead. Gold was his crown. Gold was his shroud. Cersei fixated on Tyrion as the murderer. She refused to consider any other possibility. She wanted him executed immediately. A trial was arranged, but it was a farce. Witnesses were bribed. Evidence was manufactured. Shae, Tyrion's former lover, testified against him in devastating fashion. She revealed intimate details of their relationship. She called him a monster. The betrayal was complete. Tyrion had no chance of acquittal. The trial was designed to convict him, so he demanded trial by combat. His legal right. Cersei immediately chose Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, as her champion, a massive, brutal fighter who had never lost. Tyrion chose Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper of Dawn, who wanted personal revenge against the Mountain for murdering his sister years ago. The combat was spectacular and tragic. Oberyn was faster, more skilled. He poisoned his spear. He dominated the fight. He knocked the Mountain down. He stood over him, demanding confession. He wanted the Mountain to admit to raping and killing his sister Elia, and in his moment of triumph, he got too close. The Mountain grabbed him, knocked him down, and crushed his skull with his bare hands. Oberyn died. Tyrion was convicted. Tommen became king. He was only 8 years old, gentle, kind, easily influenced, the complete opposite of Joffrey. Marjorie would marry him instead. She would still be queen, and Cersei would be queen regent until Tommen came of age. But the damage was done. Joffrey's reign, short as it was, had shown everyone what happens when an illegitimate heir takes power. When the bloodline is corrupted, when the throne belongs to someone who should never have been born. Joffrey was Cersei and Jaime's son, their genes, their creation, and he was a monster. People started wondering if maybe Stannis had been right. Maybe Joffrey was not Robert's son. The whispers grew louder. The doubts spread. Cersei had worked so hard to hide the truth. But Joffrey's very existence, his cruelty and madness, made people question, made them look more closely at those golden Lannister features. Cersei did not learn from this. She did not recognize that Joffrey's death was partly her fault, her coddling, her refusal to discipline him, her blindness to his nature. Instead, she blamed everyone else, blamed Tyrion, blamed the Tyrells, blamed fate and prophecy, never looked in the mirror and acknowledged her responsibility. Joffrey was dead. Myrcella was in Dawn. Tommen was king. 2 children left from Cersei and Jaime's forbidden love, and the prophecy said all 3 would die before Cersei did. The countdown had begun, but Cersei still believed she could fight destiny, still believed she could protect her remaining children, still refused to accept that every action she took to save them was actually sealing their fate. The trial by combat was over. Oberyn Martell lay dead with his skull crushed. The Mountain had won, though he was dying from Oberyn's poisoned spear. Tyrion Lannister was officially convicted of regicide and sentenced to death. He sat in a black cell beneath the Red Keep waiting for his execution. Cersei had finally gotten what she wanted. Her hated little brother would die for a crime he did not commit. But Jaime could not let it happen. For all their complicated history, Jaime loved his brother. More than that, he knew Tyrion was innocent. He had seen Joffrey's cruelty. He understood that many people wanted the boy king dead. Tyrion might have had motive, but he was not stupid enough to poison Joffrey in such an obvious way. Jaime made a choice that would destroy his relationship with Cersei forever. He freed Tyrion from his cell. He arranged for Varys to smuggle him out of King's Landing and across the narrow sea to safety. This was treason against the crown, defying Cersei's explicit wishes. But Jaime chose justice over blind loyalty. For once in his life, he chose to do the right thing. Before Tyrion left, Jaime told him the truth about something that had haunted Tyrion for years. When Tyrion was very young, he had married a girl named Tysha, a common girl he thought he saved from rapists. He loved her genuinely, but Tywin told him she was actually a whore, that Jaime had hired her to make Tyrion feel like a man. Then Tywin made his entire garrison rape her while Tyrion watched. It destroyed Tyrion. It was the cruelest thing anyone had ever done to him. But now, Jaime confessed, Jaime was not a whore. She genuinely loved Tyrion. The rapists were real. Jaime had lied. He forced Jaime to lie, and then Tywin orchestrated that horrific punishment simply because a Lannister married below his station. Everything Tyrion believed about that relationship was false. His one real love had been destroyed by his father's sadistic cruelty. This revelation broke something in Tyrion. He had been planning to escape quietly, to disappear, and start a new life across the sea. But now rage consumed him. Instead of going directly to where Varys was waiting, he made a detour. He went to the Tower of the Hand. He went to confront his father. Tyrion climbed through secret passages that led directly into Tywin's chambers. He emerged in the bedroom and found someone he did not expect. Shae, his former lover. The woman who had just testified against him. She was in Tywin's bed, wearing the Hand's chain, calling Tyrion my lion, the same way she used to during their intimacy. The betrayal was complete. Shae had not just testified against him to save herself. She had genuinely chosen Tywin, chosen power and gold over whatever she felt for Tyrion. She attacked him with a knife. They struggled. Tyrion strangled her with the golden chain she was wearing. The chain of the Hand of the King. Lannister gold taking another life. Tyrion stood over Shae's body, the woman he loved, the woman who betrayed him, dead by his hands. He was now a murderer, but he was not done. He found Joffrey's crossbow on the wall. He took it and went looking for Tywin. He found him in the privy, the most undignified place possible for the proud Lord Tywin Lannister. Tyrion aimed the crossbow at his father. They talked, or rather Tyrion vented decades of abuse, and Tywin responded with characteristic coldness. Tywin dismissed Tyrion's pain, called him no son of mine, refused to acknowledge the years of systematic cruelty. Then Tywin made a fatal mistake. He called Tysea a whore. After everything, after Jaime had just revealed the truth, Tywin still used that word. It was the final insult, the final proof that Tywin felt no remorse, no guilt, no recognition of what he had done. Tyrion pulled the trigger. The bolt hit Tywin in the stomach. Tywin looked shocked. He actually believed Tyrion would not do it. Tyrion reloaded. Tywin tried to speak, probably to threaten or command. Tyrion fired again. The second bolt struck true. Tywin Lannister died on a privy, the most powerful man in Westeros, brought down by the son he despised. Tyrion fled through the tunnels. Varys was waiting with a crate to smuggle him onto a ship. They left King's Landing that night. Tyrion was gone, a fugitive and kinslayer, one more crime added to his name. The next morning, Jaime found Tywin's body. The realization hit him immediately. His brother had killed their father. Jaime had freed Tyrion to save his life. He never expected this, never wanted this. The guilt was overwhelming. He had set this in motion. Cersei's reaction was thermonuclear. She lost her father and her first son within weeks of each other, the two men she relied on most, and she blamed Tyrion for both deaths. Never mind that Tyrion was innocent of killing Joffrey. He had definitely killed Tywin, and Jaime had made it possible. The relationship between the twins fractured beyond repair. Cersei could not forgive Jaime for freeing Tyrion. She saw it as the ultimate betrayal. Jaime argued that Tyrion was innocent of Joffrey's murder, that the trial was a farce, that he deserved a chance to live, but Cersei would not hear it. In her mind, Tyrion had murdered their father, and Jaime was complicit. For the first time in their lives, Cersei refused Jaime sexually. He tried to resume their physical relationship. She pushed him away, said it was too dangerous, too exposed, but really she was punishing him, using their intimacy as a weapon, withdrawing the one thing Jaime had always counted on. The power dynamics in King's Landing shifted dramatically. Tywin was the architect of everything. His strategic mind, his ruthlessness, his ability to see 10 moves ahead. Without him, the Lannister position was far weaker than it appeared. Cersei declared herself Queen Regent for young Tommen, but she lacked Tywin's skill, his judgment, his understanding of how power actually worked. Jaime was sent away. Cersei ordered him to go to the Riverlands and secure that region for the crown. Officially, it was a military assignment. Really, she wanted him gone, wanted him away from King's Landing, away from her. The separation that had once been forced by circumstance was now voluntary. Cersei chose to push him away. For the first time in 40 years, the twins were apart by choice, and Jaime began to see things more clearly. Away from Cersei's constant influence, away from her manipulation and control, he started to recognize how toxic their relationship truly was, how much he had sacrificed, how many oaths he had broken, how much honor he had destroyed, all for a woman who now blamed him for trying to save their brother's life. Tywin's death marked the beginning of the end for House Lannister. He had built everything through calculated ruthlessness. His children inherited his power, but not his competence. Cersei was paranoid and impulsive. Jaime was conflicted and changing. Tyrion was in exile. The 3 Lannister children were all damaged in different ways, and none of them could work together anymore. The dynasty Tywin spent his life building began to crumble the moment he died, and the irony was profound. He never knew the truth, never knew that Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen were not Robert's children, never knew they were products of Cersei and Jaime's incest. He fought to keep them on the throne, without realizing the throne belonged to them through deception and lies. Tywin died on a privy. The saying in King's Landing became famous. In the end, Tywin Lannister did not shit gold. The mighty brought low, the proud humbled, and his family left without the one person who could have held them together. Cersei was now in control. No father to restrain her, no Jaime nearby to counsel her, no Tyrion to outsmart her, just Cersei, her paranoia, and her desperate need to protect her remaining children. The prophecy haunted her. 1 child dead, 2 more to go. She believed she could prevent it. She believed she could fight destiny itself, and every action she took to save her children would push them closer to death. With Tywin dead and Jaime gone, Cersei ruled alone. Queen Regent to young King Tommen, she should have been careful, strategic, thoughtful. Instead, she let her paranoia consume her. Every decision was driven by fear and the prophecy that haunted her dreams. 3 children will die before you. A younger, more beautiful queen will cast you down. These predictions controlled her more than reason ever could. Tommen married Margaery Tyrell. It was necessary for the alliance with the Reach, but Cersei saw it as a threat. Margaery was everything the prophecy warned about. Younger, beautiful, charming, popular with the people in a way Cersei never was. And worse, Margaery had genuine influence over Tommen. The boy king loved his wife. He listened to her advice. He trusted her judgment. Cersei watched as Margaery slowly took her place. The people called out Margaery's name in the streets. Tommen smiled more when Margaery was around. The small council deferred to Margaery's opinions. Cersei felt herself being pushed aside, made irrelevant. The prophecy was coming true, and she was powerless to stop it. So she made a catastrophic decision. She went to the High Sparrow, the leader of the Faith of the Seven, a humble man who genuinely believed in religious doctrine. Cersei thought she could use him. She restored the faith militant, giving the religious order the right to bear arms, a military force of fanatics who answered to the High Sparrow. Her plan was to weaponize them against Margaery and the Tyrells. It worked at first. Cersei manufactured evidence of Margaery's supposed sins. The faith militant arrested her for lying to the gods about her brother Loras. Margaery was imprisoned in the Sept. Cersei was triumphant. She had removed her rival using religious zealots, the perfect crime. But Cersei fundamentally misunderstood the High Sparrow. She thought he was like everyone else, corruptible, controllable, motivated by power and gold. He was not. He genuinely believed in the faith's teachings. He could not be bribed, could not be threatened, and he saw Cersei's sins just as clearly as anyone else's. Lancel Lannister, Cersei's own cousin, had joined the faith militant. He confessed everything to the High Sparrow. He admitted to sleeping with Cersei when he was younger. He admitted to helping her get King Robert drunk before his fatal hunting trip. Revealed all of Cersei's schemes and crimes. The High Sparrow arrested Cersei, the Queen Regent herself, seized by religious fanatics she had empowered. She was thrown into a cell beneath the Sept, given only water, denied visitors, stripped of her dignity. The faith demanded she confess to her sins. Cersei refused. She was a Lannister. She would not break. But everyone breaks eventually. The isolation, the darkness, the knowledge that her son was outside, powerless to help her. Cersei agreed to confess to some of her crimes in exchange for temporary freedom. She would still face trial, but she could leave the cell. The price was the Walk of Atonement, a religious punishment where sinners walked naked through the city streets while crowds shouted shame and threw garbage. For Cersei, who valued pride and power above all else, this was a torture worse than death. They cut her hair short, stripped her completely naked, and marched her from the Great Sept to the Red Keep through the entire city. Thousands of people lined the streets. They shouted insults, threw waste and rotten food, spat on her. She was exposed, humiliated, broken in front of everyone she had ruled over. Something died in Cersei during that walk. Whatever small capacity for mercy or empathy she once had burned away, she emerged harder, colder, more ruthless than ever before. She would never be humiliated again, never be vulnerable, never show weakness, and everyone who had done this to her would pay. But worse news came from Dorne. Myrcella had been living there as part of a political arrangement, engaged to Trystane Martell. Jaime had traveled there to retrieve her. He succeeded. They sailed back toward King's Landing together. Myrcella told Jaime she knew he was her real father, and she was glad. It was a moment of connection between them. Then, the poison took effect. Ellaria Sand, Oberyn Martell's lover, had kissed Myrcella goodbye with poisoned lips. Revenge for Oberyn's death at the Mountain's hands. Revenge against the Lannisters. Myrcella began bleeding from her nose. She collapsed in Jaime's arms. She died on that ship, looking at her father, saying she was happy he was her father. Cersei's second child was dead. The prophecy was 2/3 complete. Gold shall be their crowns and gold their shrouds. Joffrey murdered at his wedding. Myrcella poisoned in vengeance. Only Tommen remained, and Cersei became even more desperate to protect him. She still faced trial from the faith. Both she and Margaery were supposed to stand trial for their crimes. It would be public, humiliating, and if convicted, Cersei would likely be executed or imprisoned forever. She could not allow it, would not allow it. So she planned something that would have made the Mad King proud. Years ago, King Aerys Targaryen had hidden caches of wildfire throughout King's Landing, thousands of jars of the green explosive liquid. He planned to burn the entire city rather than let Robert Baratheon take it. Jaime killed him before he could give the order, but the wildfire remained hidden beneath buildings throughout the city. Cersei found it. Her new hand Qyburn located the caches, particularly the ones beneath the great Sept of Baelor, the holiest building in the city, where the trials would take place, where all her enemies would gather. The day of the trials arrived. The High Sparrow was there, Margaery, her brother Loras, their father Mace Tyrell, Lancel, dozens of nobles and hundreds of the faithful, everyone who mattered. Cersei did not attend. She stayed in the Red Keep, drinking wine. She had forbidden Tommen from attending as well, kept him in his chambers. Qyburn's little birds, the children who served as his spies, went into the tunnels beneath the Sept. They lit the wildfire. The explosion was massive. Green flames consumed the Sept. Instantly, the entire building collapsed. Everyone inside died, burned alive or crushed by falling stone. Hundreds of people killed in seconds. Cersei watched from her window, saw the green flames rising, saw her enemies destroyed. The High Sparrow who humiliated her, Margaery who threatened to replace her, the entire Tyrell leadership, Lancel who betrayed her, all gone, all dead. She smiled. Tommen watched too. From his window in the Red Keep he saw the Sept explode. He understood immediately what had happened. His wife was in that Sept, Margaery, the woman he loved. His mother had killed her, killed hundreds of innocent people, committed mass murder to escape justice. The young king stood up. He removed his crown, placed it carefully on the table. He walked to his window, and without hesitation, without a word, he stepped out. He fell to his death. Tommen Baratheon, the gentlest of Cersei's children, chose death over living in the world his mother had created. Cersei's third child was dead. The prophecy was complete. All three children dead before her. Gold their crowns, gold their shrouds. Joffrey poisoned. Myrcella poisoned. Tommen broken by his mother's actions. Cersei had spent her entire life trying to protect her children, and she had contributed to all three of their deaths. But Cersei did not break, did not fall apart. Instead, she saw an opportunity. With Tommen dead, there was no heir. No one with a stronger claim than her, so she took it. She crowned herself Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Not Queen Regent, not Queen Mother. Queen, the first woman to rule Westeros in her own right. Her coronation was a perversion of everything a crowning should be. The city was traumatized. Hundreds dead in the Sept explosion. Their queen was a mass murderer, but she had the power. She had eliminated her enemies, and she sat on the Iron Throne, wearing a crown she had stolen through genocide. Jaime returned to King's Landing after this. He had been in the Riverlands securing that region for the crown. He arrived to find the Sept destroyed, the Tyrells wiped out, Tommen dead, and Cersei crowned as queen. He stood in the throne room watching her coronation. His face showed complete disgust and horror. He knew what she had done. He recognized it immediately. The wildfire, the mass murder, the complete disregard for innocent life. Cersei had become exactly what the Mad King was. The same Mad King that Jaime had killed to prevent from burning the city. Jaime killed Aerys to save King's Landing, and now the woman he loved had done what Aerys never could. But he stayed. That is the terrible power of trauma bonds and lifelong codependency. Even seeing what she had become, even knowing she was a monster, Jaime could not leave her, not yet. He was disgusted, horrified, but still bound to her in ways he could not break. Cersei was now the queen, but her kingdom was falling apart. The North had declared independence under the Starks. The Vale supported them. The Riverlands were devastated. Dawn hated her. The Reach, after she murdered the Tyrells, turned against her completely. She controlled King's Landing and the Westerlands. That was all. And even in King's Landing, the people hated her, called her the Mad Queen, compared her to Aerys Targaryen. She did not care. She had power. She had eliminated her enemies. She believed she had won. But across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen was coming with 3 dragons and a massive army, and she had a new advisor, Tyrion Lannister, the brother Cersei tried to execute, the brother who knew all her weaknesses. The final war was coming, and Cersei, sitting on a throne built on the ashes of hundreds of innocent people, sitting on a throne she had no right to, believed she could win, believed she could hold power forever. She had no idea that her obsession with Jaime, the relationship that started everything, would soon bring her face to face with her own death. A threat emerged that made all the political scheming seem meaningless. Beyond the wall, an army of the dead was marching south, corpses reanimated by ancient magic, led by the Night King and his White Walkers, an existential threat to every living person in Westeros. If they were not stopped, everyone would die or become part of their army. Jon Snow, who was actually Aegon Targaryen, though few knew it yet, called for a truce. He had fought the dead, seen them with his own eyes. He knew the threat was real. He proposed something unprecedented. All the warring factions would stop fighting each other temporarily. Unite against the dead first. Deal with who rules the 7 kingdoms after humanity survived. Daenerys Targaryen agreed. She had seen the dead, lost one of her dragons to them. She understood the stakes. Together with Jon and Tyrion, they arranged a summit, a meeting at the Dragon Pit in King's Landing. Every major leader would attend. They would show Cersei proof that the dead existed. Surely when faced with extinction, she would agree to help. The meeting happened, an incredible moment. Daenerys arrived with her dragons. Jon Snow represented the north. Tyrion was there. Brienne Haftarth, Davos Seaworth. On the other side, Cersei sat with Jaime Cayburn and her newest ally, Euron Greyjoy, a psychotic pirate who commanded a powerful fleet. They brought a white, an actual dead person, reanimated and murderous. They showed it to Cersei, let her see it try to kill, showed her that only fire or dragonglass could stop it. The evidence was undeniable. The threat was real. Everyone in that pit understood. The war between the living and the dead was coming. Cersei agreed. She said she would send the Lannister armies north. They would fight alongside the Starks and Daenerys. Humanity would stand together. The relief was palpable. Tyrion, despite everything, had convinced his sister to do the right thing. They could actually win this. Jaime believed her. He immediately began preparing to march the Lannister forces north. This was the most important thing he would ever do. Forget politics. Forget the throne. This was about survival, about protecting the living. He felt something he had not felt in years: purpose, honor, the chance to actually be the knight he once dreamed of being. Then Cersei stopped him, called him to the map room, and revealed the truth. She had lied. There would be no Lannister armies marching north. They would stay in King's Landing. Her plan was simple and ruthless. Let the dead and the living destroy each other. When both sides were weakened and exhausted, she would march north with fresh troops and take control. Jaime was stunned. He had pledged their forces in good faith. In front of everyone, he gave his word. The word of House Lannister, and Cersei was making him break it, making him look like an oath-breaker. Again, but worse than that, she was willing to let humanity fall, willing to let countless people die, just for a strategic advantage. They argued. Jaime said he had given his word. Cersei said he gave her word, not his own. Jaime said this was about more than politics. The living had to stand together, or everyone would die, including them. Cersei did not care. She believed the dead would be stopped without her help, and if they were not, she would deal with it then. For the first time in his entire life, Jaime chose honor over Cersei. He said he was going north, with or without her permission. With or without the Lannister army, he would keep his word. He would fight for the living. Cersei called his bluff. She ordered Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, to kill him. The massive undead knight drew his sword. This was the ultimate test. Jaegon walked toward the door, walked right past the Mountain. For dared Cersei to give the final order, she did not. She could not kill him. Even after everything, even with all her rage and paranoia, she could not watch him die. Jaime left King's Landing alone, left Cersei for the first time by choice in 40 years. He rode north through the snow, away from power, away from the throne, away from the woman who had defined his entire existence. It was the bravest thing he had ever done. Arriving at Winterfell was humbling. He was surrounded by people he had wronged. Bran Stark, the boy he pushed out of a window, was there, alive, staring at him with eyes that saw everything. Daenerys Targaryen, daughter of the king he killed, was there. She wanted him executed immediately. The Northerners remembered his family's crimes, the Red Wedding, the years of war. Brienne of Tarth spoke for him, vouched for him. Sansa Stark, who had every reason to hate all Lannisters, spared his life because Brienne asked. Brienne was allowed to stay, to fight, to prove himself. The Battle of Winterfell was hell on earth. The dead came in overwhelming numbers. The living were pushed to the breaking point. Jaime fought bravely. Despite having only one hand, despite being older and slower than he once was, he fought alongside people who had been his enemies. He protected the living. For once in his life he was on the right side. They won. Against impossible odds, they defeated the Night King and his army. The dawn came. The dead were truly dead, and Jaime had survived. He had proven himself, earned respect, shown that he could be more than the Kingslayer, more than Cersei's shadow. He spent time with Brienne, the woman who had shown him what honor looked like. They grew closer. She had always seen potential in him, believed he could be better. They slept together. It was tender, real, healthy. Everything his relationship with Cersei was not. For a moment, Jaime glimpsed what his life could be. A life with someone who brought out his best self instead of his worst. Then news came from the south. Daenerys was attacking King's Landing. Cersei's forces were losing. The city was being besieged, and something in Jaime broke. Or maybe it never healed. The addiction reasserted itself. The decades of codependency could not be overcome by a few months of growth. He left Winterfell in the night, left Brienne crying. She begged him to stay, to choose the good life, the honorable life, the life with her. But Jaime could not. He said something that revealed the truth about himself. She is hateful, and so am I. He believed he was fundamentally broken, that he belonged with Cersei, that they deserved each other. He sneaked back into King's Landing. As Daenerys' forces attacked, the city was chaos. Buildings burning, people screaming. Daenerys had snapped, was burning the entire city even after they surrendered. Innocent people were dying by the thousands. Jaime pushed through the destruction, looking for one person. He found Cersei in the Red Keep. She was finally afraid, finally realized she had lost everything. Her armies defeated, her alliance shattered, the castle collapsing around her. She saw Jaime and everything else disappeared. Nothing else mattered. He was there. They were together. They held each other as the ceiling began to fall. The Red Keep, the symbol of power they had both obsessed over, was crumbling. Jaime said nothing else matters, only us, and Cersei agreed. In their final moments, it was just the two of them. The way it had always been, the way it started in the womb. The ceiling collapsed. Tons of stone and rubble came down. They died together, holding each other, crushed under the weight of everything they had destroyed. They came into the world together. They left it together. And in between, they had set fire to an entire continent. Their bodies were found later by Tyrion, buried under rubble, still holding each other. The last two pieces of Tywin's legacy, dead because they could not let go, could not stop, could not break the cycle that had consumed them since birth. Jaime had a chance at redemption. He fought for the living, earned respect, found someone who loved him for who he could be, not who he was. But in the end, the pull was too strong. The addiction won. He chose death with Cersei over life without her. And Cersei died, believing to the very end that she was right, that she had done what was necessary, that she was strong, not monstrous. She never accepted responsibility for her children's deaths. For the wars, for the destruction, she died as she lived, holding on to Jaime, holding on to power, holding on to delusions that destroyed everything around them. Let's account for everything. The complete cost of what Cersei and Jaime's obsession created. This was not just a tragic love story. This was a cascade of destruction that consumed an entire continent. Start with the children who should never have existed. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen. 3 lives created through incest. Joffrey became a sadistic monster who tortured innocents and ignited wars. Myrcella remained innocent but died young for sins she did not commit. Tommen was gentle and kind, broken by his mother's crimes, driven to suicide at a young age. All 3 dead before reaching adulthood. All 3 burdened with parents' sins from the moment they were born. The wars they caused killed tens of thousands directly. The War of 5 Kings devastated the Riverlands. Entire villages burned, families slaughtered, fields left barren. The North lost an entire generation of young men. Lords and common soldiers alike died in battles that never should have happened. All because Joffrey was a false heir. All because the succession was built on lies. The Red Wedding alone murdered dozens of northern lords. Robb Stark and his pregnant wife. Their unborn child who never drew breath. Catelyn Stark, who watched her son die before her own throat was cut. The violation of guest right, one of the most sacred customs in Westeros, destroyed forever. The cultural wound from that betrayal will last centuries, and it was orchestrated to protect a bastard's claim to a throne. The Sept of Baelor explosion killed hundreds in an instant. The High Sparrow and the entire faith militant leadership. Marjorie Tyrell, who genuinely cared for the people and would have been a good queen. Her brother Loras, their father Mace, dozens of nobles, hundreds of faithful worshippers who came to witness justice, all murdered by wildfire because Cersei would not face accountability for her crimes. Then came King's Landing's destruction. When Daenerys Targaryen burned the city, hundreds of thousands died. Men, women, children. People who had nothing to do with the political games. They just lived in the capital. They died screaming as dragonfire consumed them. And Daenerys' descent into madness was triggered by the isolation and paranoia that Cersei's actions had created. The Mad Queen created another Mad Queen. House Lannister itself went extinct. Tywin built a legacy through ruthless calculation. He made his house the most powerful in Westeros, and his children destroyed it completely within years of his death. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen all dead. Kevan Lannister blown up in the Sept, Lancel dead the same day. Cersei and Jaime crushed under rubble. The only survivor was Tyrion, and he spent the rest of his life trying to repair the damage his family had caused. Think about the generational destruction. The Starks lost Ned, Catelyn, and Robb. 3 leaders of that ancient house murdered. The Tyrells lost their entire main line. Centuries of lineage ended in one explosion. The Baratheons went extinct, except for one bastard. The Martells were wiped out, seeking revenge for crimes the Lannisters committed. Family after family destroyed by the ripple effects of one incestuous relationship. But the deepest tragedy was not the death toll, it was the waste. Jaime Lannister could have been one of the greatest knights in history. He was gifted with talent, intelligence, and opportunity. Instead, he became the Kingslayer, broke every oath he ever made, spent his life as Cersei's shadow. He had glimpses of redemption, moments where he chose honor, but the addiction always pulled him back. He died having wasted everything he could have been. Cersei had power and position that women in Westeros rarely achieved. She could have been remembered as a capable ruler. Instead, she became a mass murderer, a tyrant, someone compared unfavorably to the Mad King. Her intelligence was consumed by paranoia. Her love for her children twisted into something that killed them. She died hated by everyone, having destroyed her own legacy. And what was it all for? They wanted to be together. They believed they were soulmates, 2 halves of one whole. But that was not love, that was narcissism. They loved themselves reflected in each other. Neither could see the other as a separate person with separate needs. It was obsession, addiction, codependency, taken to its most destructive extreme. Real love does not destroy everything it touches. Real love does not require thousands of deaths to sustain itself. Real love does not sacrifice children, honor, and kingdoms just to continue. What Cersei and Jaime had was a sickness that consumed them and everyone around them. The prophecy Cersei feared came true, exactly as predicted. 3 children dead, a younger, more beautiful queen casting her down. Whether it was Marjorie or Daenerys or both, it happened. But here is the crucial point. The prophecy was self-fulfilling. Every action Cersei took to prevent it made it happen. Her paranoia about Marjorie led to empowering the faith militant that led to the Sept explosion that killed Marjorie, but also caused Tommen's suicide. She created what she feared most. Tywin bore responsibility too. He raised Cersei to believe she was exceptional. Above consequences, he systematically abused Tyrion. He ignored the obvious signs about Cersei and Jaime, because acknowledging them would hurt his ambitions. He built a dynasty on a foundation of cruelty and neglect. When he died, that foundation immediately crumbled. The truly haunting aspect is how preventable all of this was. At any point, Cersei and Jaime could have stopped. After Robert's death, they could have taken their children and fled. After Joffrey died, they could have confessed and faced exile instead of execution. After Tywin died, Cersei could have stepped back from power. After the Sept explosion, she could have abdicated. There were a dozen off-ramps. They took none of them. The final battle for King's Landing left the capital in ruins. The Red Keep, the symbol of centralized power, collapsed. The Iron Throne itself was melted by dragonfire. The system that the Lannisters had sacrificed everything to control was destroyed. The throne Cersei murdered hundreds to sit on ceased to exist. Everything they fought for turned to ash. Tyrion found their bodies in the rubble. He wept. Despite everything they had done to him, despite the murder attempts and the false accusations and the lifetime of abuse, he mourned them. They were his family, his sister and brother. He loved them even knowing what they were. That grief was perhaps the most human moment in the entire tragedy. The survivors rebuilt. Bran Stark, the boy Jaime pushed out of a window, became king, not through conquest or heredity, through choice. A broken system was replaced with something new. The wheel that Daenerys wanted to break was finally broken. But the cost was almost everything. House Lannister's legacy is a warning. about what happens when privilege becomes arrogance, when obsession masquerades as love, when people believe they are above morality and consequences. The Lannisters thought their gold made them untouchable, their power made them special, their beauty made them exceptional. They were wrong. In the songs and stories told after, the Lannisters became villains, cautionary tales. The Red Wedding is commemorated as a day of shame, the Sept explosion remembered as the day of green fire, Cersei compared to the Mad King, Jaime remembered as the Kingslayer who wasted his potential. Their names became synonymous with treachery and destruction. But perhaps the saddest element is the lost potential. Joffrey, with proper guidance and acknowledgement of his issues, might have been helped. Myrcella and Tommen were innocent children who deserved long lives. Jaime showed he was capable of honor and growth. Cersei's intelligence could have been used for good. All of it wasted, all of it destroyed by a relationship that should never have been. The final image is perfect in its symbolism. Cersei and Jaime, holding each other under the rubble. They got exactly what they wanted, to be together, to never be separated. They achieved their goal at the cost of everything else. Their children dead, their house extinct, their city destroyed, their legacy in ruins, but they died together. That was what mattered most to them, and that is what makes the tragedy complete. This is what obsession costs. This is the price of believing you are above the rules that govern everyone else. This is what happens when narcissism and codependency destroy two people from the inside and radiate outward to destroy everything around them. The Lannister twins did not just destroy themselves, they destroyed an entire kingdom, and they did it all while believing they were the heroes of their own story. "Hear me roar," the Lannister words proclaimed. But in the end, their roar was a death scream that echoed across Westeros, a warning to anyone who would put personal desire above all else, a reminder that some loves are not worth the cost, and a testament to the fact that even the mightiest houses can fall when rot begins at the core. House Lannister destroyed forever, not by dragons, not by enemies, but by twins who loved each other too much and loved everyone else too little.